Yeah,
Cool.
this is it. This is so good.
Yep.
Hello, everyone.
And what is
Like
that?
Julie.
And space go off.
Has Linda been updated with the change with Julie and yourself for attending?
I don't have
meetings?
a choice.
No, no, that's all right. It just didn't look like Julie.
So you'll see two people now in the Audit and Risk Committee as the infrastructure manager.
Cool.
And Julie's focusing while she's still the executive manager infrastructure.
Yeah.
And team lead for 3 Waters. I think I've got that title right.
Yeah, so
And so there's a sort of a split and engagement.
slight role change.
And are you over there because of distancing requirements, or do you want to come up?
So
Oh, so actually able to give that.
Yeah.
Okay, so feel free to join us if you need to.
Julie, if we're contemplating not having the workshop, do we need to let ET know that the 11:25 is going to become 11 so that they're here?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
it.
thank you. Yeah.
And is Julie planning to come? It might just be, Sarge will be here by that point if we might.
That's all I have. It might be us. It
Being a lot of
might be who's here.
Yeah, could well.
Okay, in that case, let's declare the meeting open. We've got apologies from Nigel and Liz.
But just Nigel and Neil is all we got.
As the committee.
Yeah.
And we've got confirmations of the
Oh,
minutes.
just need to,
Yeah, I'll move the apologies.
just move.
Oh.
Second that. Oh, yeah, fantastic.
Okay, Tim, would you like to be my official seconder for the?
Roger that.
Thank you.
Apart from the minutes, because I wasn't here.
Ah.
Yes.
Okay, minutes of the 25 February meeting.
I'll move that it's a true and accurate record.
Excellent, I'll second that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carried. Now I have a follow-up question, page 8 of the minutes. Just because it's not covered off. Item 22.1.2 policies. This was a question, we approved the staff interest policy, but the question was, does current practice reflect the policy? Yes, it does. So that was great that you asked that question, and it was the time for me to send everyone out a reminder.
Yeah.
And what I also implemented in corporate services in my team, because of the nature of our business, that even if they've got nothing to declare, I want the form completed every.
To say they have nothing.
Yeah, just because of the nature of that, where they're across so many. Is that there is always the potential for oral misconduct or anything like that, because we have such a access. So that's been completed, and all executive team have reviewed those registers. Excellent. Move on in the declaration of interest. Any updates? And strategy register.
Hello, Tanaka and Friday, correct, run together, Tanaka Koto. It's a relatively short update on the register this time around. We've added a new violence and aggression management policy that's been created in the HR space, our health and safety as well, and that's due to a number of incidents. The dangerous and unsanitary building policy has been adopted, and the Easter Sunday trading policy was re-adopted for a further 5-year period. We've had the library policies expire in the last gap. They're largely renewed now. There were 5 policies. 2 of those are shared with Queenstown Lakes. Those 2 policies we've done our portion and they're waiting on Queenstown Lakes. The remaining policies have been combined into one. Review to see if it covers everything. So it could come up now, but we've decided to hold it back maybe a quarter while we address that absolutely everything that could be in it. The housing strategy is the other one that moved back, and that one's currently up for public feedback, so we've adjusted the time frame to reflect. I had COVID and right up to May through June policies. I understand you've spoken with Leanne about the procurement policy. The risk management policy is on the agenda today. And the final one, the protected disclosures whistleblowing policy sits in HR. So we're just recruiting there and that one will be updated.
Recruiting still for the risk and procurement advisor as well, so that's just advertised twice now with no joy. We'll go out the third time.
And there is one final piece of work that we're making, that's a new guidance document for policy owners. Process are due beforehand. The current process is each time I come to this meeting, I let all policy owners know what's about. What we'd like to do is to provide a place where they can refer to all policies and see them there. And also lay out the steps and processes for updating and what help we can give.
At the moment, it's incredibly manual, so we are evolving the space, and hopefully that does help, so that when things are coming up, that the policy owner, sometimes it is my team, sometimes it is another part of the business, they know in advance, oh, that policy's coming up in 3 months, we'll do something about it. We'll tell us about it.
Right, so procurement and protected disclosures will come to the next. I can't guarantee that. I'm happy to take a review of procurement, the schedule for it. I'll try and put that into my final 2 months and recognising I'm trying to get as much as I can covered for assuming there'll be a lag between me leaving and a new replacement. And we still won't have replaced, there'll be high chance that we won't have replaced Gabby by that stage. So I might see if I can work with Alex and see. It was such a big piece of work, that procurement, with an external agency and quite a significant cost, that it really should only need a review. Oh, I would hope. And I'm pretty cool. I should take that out. I might just go to the leaders and see if I can get some suggestions of what hasn't worked. Yeah. Then probably the critical one is protected disclosures, because the Act's changing. Again, we're down in a position in HR or people culture.
At that stage, and doing a program to
Just for my own clarification, with the new Whistleblower Act coming in on the 1st of July, the policy will just reflect that. There's nothing in the Act that says we have to have the policy. We're just going to be a little bit behind having the policy catch up.
Correct.
So,
any further questions? That's going to be quick. No, there's so many questions we can ask. Okay, so I will move that report be received.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Okay. So that's me. I'll just stay here. I'm not going to go down the end of the table. No, the first thing I have to own up to is I thought the information and records management audit had been done, and I forgot that we'd actually decided that we'd be doing them together. So I've changed my internal audit review program so that we will see if we haven't done them. I won't have tips when they're until I know that they're done. So we've got the 3 that are happening at the moment. So the information and records management act audit is happening this month. Nathan's managing that alongside security. And then the procurement audit starts. In fact, we'll be doing a lot of the lead up work, Ian and I now, for that to start this month as well.
Actually, that makes sense if before you bring the procurement, do the review of the policy, probably wait for the audit.
Correct, because we're hoping that's going to highlight anything that's not working well. Yeah, and it goes right across our organisation. That looks at how we procure, why we procure, have we adhered to delegations, have we adhered to the policy, all of those things. So yeah, quite looking forward to that one.
Okay. So do you think that one will be at the September?
Yeah, the report should be back to us in time for Ian to bring that to the September meeting, any recommendations that come out of it. Brilliant.
30th of September.
30th, which is good because they'll probably give us the written report end of July, and that gives us time. We often then there's a bit of argy-bargy between us and the auditors about the correctness, but that means too there should be time if you need to go back to procurement. Yep.
And contract management and capital expenditure, which is the 22-23 year, because it, 22-23 starts next month.
Yeah. I haven't done anything on that one. And I'll leave that with Anne and probably Julie / QP to engage the capital expenditure part, because that's such a big area in QP's area, albeit it is also quite a reasonable amount in Gareth's area. The contract management is going to be challenging because we have not got a contract management system yet. So I am wondering whether we swap one of the other two that are due for 23-24 round with the contract management for next year, because we've just got that program of works on Nathan's radar for doing a contract management, but it's quite a bit of work in that to get the system.
Yeah.
So we could do one of two things. We could, business continuity is not going to cost, it's not actually an audit at this stage, and that's that work. I wonder if we look at the recruitment or the health and safety audits and swap that around with the contract management. Look at your guidance there. I'd also need to talk to Lou Fleck, because both of those sit under Lou Fleck and her program of work, and I don't want to go and put something on top of her that's not doable.
Well, that makes sense to me. The contract management would probably be right there a waste of time. Yeah, I haven't got the system. I'm just going to tell you you need a system. And
Yeah. Well, Audit New Zealand are telling us that anyway.
Yeah, so you're better to sort of. So perhaps we put that on, yeah, so we know that perhaps the recommendation will be coming at the next meeting, trying to bring forward.
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah.
Or any of the other ones down the road.
They're the only two, because after that we then need to come back with the new committee at the end and ask what you want for your next 3-year program. 1 year already been committed, but what do you want to take out? Because that's really good, and you might want to invite Deloitte to come and do another presentation, and like we did 3 years ago.
Yeah,
So they tell us what's trending.
yeah,
Yeah.
so perhaps if you, so we'll leave it for management to come back and say, have a chat and think which one should be brought forward.
And that'll be after the election, Deloitte comes. Potentially the new committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All good?
Put in my handover notes.
Okay.
Looking at the actual register, there was nothing on our internal audit. Everything's been completed, which is really neat. The last thing that was being completed was the time sheets, and that have been done, so all of that's been closed. In regards to the Audit New Zealand stuff, and it's not popped up very well in this.
Yeah.
Well, it's been chopped off. Yeah, mine is too.
Yeah.
Get ready to look at that and all that's chopped off. But one's in progress is around the systems control, which is Nathan's area that he's working on, and the 3 waters, which from my data's been collected, it's been valued this year by our insurance company, because they're doing a valuation both for the end of year financial report, but also for our insurance purposes, because they're 2 different values, and that hasn't been done, so that's going to be really good.
Okay.
So that should be updated by the time we come to the next audit in this meeting. Oops.
I'm worried about putting the computer in the room for report because it just doesn't warrant it.
It's not warranted yet, so
So it's not really,
no.
it says technology constraints, but it isn't. It's just practical.
So,
practicality.
yeah.
That reads like the technology won't allow us to do it. Which it would, like, we'd just be stupid to.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I'm happy with that.
It's closed.
Okay, well, I'll move that we received a report.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those opposed, say aye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You've been done that.
Yep, I'm sure you've heard this already.
We did this at council on Wednesday. We were so fast. So
Okay,
if you have no issues, Madam Chair.
right, well, we might, yes, okay, so anything, let's take it at absolutely as read, and anything you want to particularly
for the annual plan we're talking.
No, for your financial.
On the
report.
financials, well, I'd like to point out that this was inadvertently missed from your report. All the explanations went with it. It was for the profit and loss by activity. So,
It was in the council report, just not in the Audit and Risk. It fell off somehow.
sorry about that. There's not probably much to mention. The surplus is 14.3 million, which is 1.27 favourable to the budget of 13. And we've got the expenses have now come through for the cost of sales of stage 1 Dunstan Park. And the staff budget is still lower because of the lag in staff replacement and recruitment costs as well. We haven't done as much training and travel due to COVID. Year to date, capital is 26 million, being 41% of the 65 million spent. And the main areas that we're behind in, as we are, I think each time, is the Cromwell Master Plan. Parks and Recreation's $1 million below budget, but the 400,000 for the Cromwell pool came through in June. And then Three Waters is behind with the impacts of COVID from Lake Dunstan, the water treatment plant and capacity upgrades, wastewater improvements and water stuff.
And I'd just like to add there, if you look at our original annual plan budget, we were only going to spend just under 31 mil, and it's jumped up to 64, nearly 65 million with all our carry forwards.
Yeah.
And we know that that's the nature of the capital business projects, because they spread across the years.
Yeah.
And 65 mil we said at the time with the carry forward when we brought it to council, that was a huge ask getting all that done. On top of that, we have to focus on the stimulus funding work as well.
Yeah, because I did question the word favourable when I thought, yes, you're spending less, but it's because it's so it's not necessarily favourable.
It's favourable to budget, but it's not really favourable to business as usual.
But it's really, or you could go and go the spend, but people will then think it's unfavourable, and it's a funny language accounting. There's never an easy answer. No, just shoot the accountants and be done with it.
As at 31st of March, we've got 47,000 of outstanding in accounts receivable over 90 days. And I have been in contact with Mervyn Shaw, and hopefully we can get that by 30 June.
He's a serial litigant, slow payer.
Yeah.
It's not just us.
Oh, and I think it's about 2 or 3 years, but we had a meeting with them and asked them to pay by 30th of June, but I've just had an email back from him with reasons why not. So we'll work on that.
Just keep working on the direct conversation with them rather than trying to go down there, bringing in a third party to chase them through bad debts, through that debtors. Is your last resort.
And we put him on a payment plan, and he has paid 2 of the 3 payments, so he has tried.
It's ironic, I've heard the name in other places.
Yeah.
The internal loans are forecast to be 4 million at 30th of June, and the external loans are 148,000. Since the 31st of March, we've taken our first tranche of borrowing 5 million through our GFA on the 28th of April.
Have you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was going to say, a full budget for external debt and wasn't here.
No, we budgeted on 25 mil and we haven't. We may ramp up our external borrowings next year, early next year, not because we're low on cash, more because we're just not 100% sure of our surety behind the 3 Waters, but me, Tim and our chief exec are meeting with some key people in a fortnight, and hopefully we'll get a bit more guidance. I've got verbal confirmation from July last year, but that doesn't, mind you, as Scott said at the time, written confirmation doesn't guarantee us either. So it's a rock and a hard place, but Anne's right across our treasury activities and works with Miles from Glencourt, who's really great with us. And we will look at, I think we've got a meeting very soon with them actually, and we will look at giving LGFA a heads up that we may ramp up our borrowings for July, and what we'll look at is what's external, what's our 3 Waters reserves looking like, and we'll borrow to that 3 Waters deficit,
just to have
And then
in
we'll,
place to prove. you've
and
got
then, yeah, and then we'll look at the projections for the 30 June 2023, depending on what we find, and we will possibly borrow in advance and then invest. And where we can, we will allocate some of those tranches to specific activities that are still being built in Three Waters, which means we can capitalise that interest cost rather than having the impact on our ratepayers. Does that make sense? Can only capitalise interest costs if the activity is still in the development and if we can tag the debt to that development. We do
So
that.
when we borrow on when we don't actually need the money at the time, when you talk about invest in what?
In the bank, we'll take it, we'll put it back into the bank under some good investment terms because we have longer
Yeah.
days for that.
So this
And
tranche,
interest.
The interest you earn will be less than the interest.
It always is,
Yeah.
but if we can capitalise some of that, that will help mitigate.
I was going to ask would it be better because it's a pretty favourable rate that we can borrow at, isn't it?
the tranche that we've just taken out for 5 million is 2.74%. And if we
Yeah.
invest it, we might get 1.5 maybe, if we do it over 90 days.
But we might be able to get some of this, we'll be able to do a lot longer because we won't need the
Yeah.
cash. We just need to have the external debt
Yeah.
ring fence to protect us. And there's a trade-off risk, and me, Tim and I have had this conversation many times, is while we might spend a bit more on interest, and we are budgeted to have interest in next year's annual plan.
Yeah.
We're budgeted to have 47 million in debt. But we budgeted that new debt doesn't start till at least January of the new calendar year. So we work on a because you don't go and borrow it typically on the 1st of July. We do a balance. But we're that the risk of not having that debt externally funded and then them saying we won't reimburse you it
Yes.
outweighs the gap between what we borrow, the cost of borrowing, and what we earn
Yeah.
with it sitting in the bank. And we have to take that gamble.
So
Possibly.
you'd be limited on how long you can invest it for.
We can invest it up to the 12 months. We can't invest it past the financial year. And that's a requirement. LG, Local Government Act, Rating Act, all of those things. So we could only take it for 12 months tops.
Affordability seeing that as part of it.
Yeah, we always said to you that once we started getting that money, we would start reporting against the caveats, but we haven't, that doesn't kick in until we've got 20 million. Absolutely. Yes, covenants, but they'll probably.
But still reporting that this external.
Our liability policy lays out all of the reports with.
Yeah. And the liability policy's been updated to exclude. negatives, hasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Not so much around the reporting, but more around the repayment of how much debt we can have in 12 months to be repaid, because all of our Three Waters debt will expire the 30th of June 2024. Yep. In preparation for sending it over, so we couldn't have that in the liability policy, so we did a tweak with Miles.
So the idea is the assets will transfer and however much debt is sitting there will effectively transfer.
Yep, that's our belief. Scott said at the time that'll be easy, depending on what LGFA do, because they have to agree by their shareholders to extend their services to Three Waters entity. At the moment, they don't have that ability.
Well, it depends how Three Waters is going to be
Correct. So let's say if they do go through LGFA, even if some expired later, he thinks we'll be able to novate it across, but we're going to play it safe based on my conversation with him and just have it all end on the 30th of June 2020. He's part of DIA.
You should just note I am on the board.
Yeah. I'm conscious of that, and I have a lot of conversations with Miles, who hears a lot of what's going on behind the scenes. But it's a balancing act of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
We can roll over debt, so we get close to the 20.
Oh, absolutely.
June
Yeah,
24,
no,
just roll it
no,
over.
I think it's a no regrets strategy for the moment. It leaves all the options open, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's it.
The only other thing to mention was the reserves projected with the reforecast to be at 12.9 million deficit, and I think we were reporting 10.7.
All our
Yeah, that's right.
I move it.
Yeah. Any more questions? Right, well, I'll move that we receive the report.
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Alright,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, I just think of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Now, okay.
Morning.
Aye.
alright.
Before you start,
Mhm.
we had a wee chat about the workshop that was planned for later.
Okay.
And because there's only 3 of us, not 5,
Yep.
and Saskia said that there's going to be another executive sort of workshop.
Leadership.
Yeah. That perhaps we defer that until next time when you might have
Okay.
gone around, unless there's anything you need to particularly seek our input on.
More the intention was to give you guys, this committee, an update on whether it actually is, so
Okay,
can incorporate it into the cybersecurity report as well,
yeah.
which I have touched on in the past, so.
Okay, well, let's do that, because I think if we then schedule a proper sort of
We've got the full team.
next time, and it will have been through there. Scott, sorry. Tom.
Okay, that's right, I'll make sure I bring that up. Okay, so first report, consider the cybersecurity plan 2022 to 25, information and records management plan 22 to 25, and the privacy plan. In terms of the cybersecurity plan, this is a new plan, so the previous plan has been completed. As Leanne has mentioned, we're currently in audit of that, so let's draft the plan that's attached to the report. And that external auditor will form the plan and provide us with recommendations for actions. In terms of the information and records management plan, this is the first plan related to information and records management at council. Again, this is being audited by an external party, and again, this will inform the actions of the plan's actions. The privacy plan is a new plan as well. We have got actions, included those in the draft at the moment, just finalising those, and then we go through an executive review and then finalisation of that plan gets reviewed, insurance assessment annually. Purpose of bringing the plans to the committee is just to provide you an update on their progress. In terms of cybersecurity, I'm going to touch on that first. That's the majority of the report. And I'll just focus on the key points for you. I thought of interest would be page 5, and that shows
Oh, that's
the
fine.
various activity, cybersecurity events, etc., versus previous years of 21 versus the previous years, and you can see that increase there.
Sorry,
Page 5.
Page numbers. Hang on, no,
Oh,
we're
sorry.
on different pages. Yeah. Tell us again the heading, please.
Oh, sorry, my page.
Your page 5.
We go,
So it starts with incident numbers, breakdowns,
So page
categories.
Page 39.
41? I thought 41.
Incident numbers is at 39 as well.
Cool.
I think 39.
Oh, yeah, got
So the yellow bar graph.
Yeah, it starts from 2027 to 2021, yellow bar graph.
I think it's 41 then.
Okay.
41.
Right.
We're at 8831.
Yeah, got it with you.
Apologies. I didn't think about that in terms of numbers. I'm just bringing that to your attention because I thought that's a great summary of the previous years versus current and the trend that's starting to happen. You can see that through the other pages, in particular, the phishing and credential harvesting versus scam versus malware. The phishing and credential harvesting we need to focus on in terms of training and educating our staff for obvious reasons. And I think that just justifies that. The interesting thing that's happening at the moment is the scams and frauds that seems to be heightening right now in terms of, in particular, text messaging. CEO, myself, other members of staff are getting texts from various banks or members that are trained to be banks. So you're starting to see that escalate and even in the community as well. In terms of continued interest points, Not sure what page this
Show
is,
us the
sorry.
picture. Show me your picture now, it's on the page.
The heading is actually the Elgin Cybersecurity Program Update. And it's about
46.
So as mentioned, the next steps in terms of our program is the audit. This we will reset council's compliance in terms of our compliance framework. If you turn to the next page, you can see we're currently assessing ourselves at being around 82%. So it'll be interesting to see what that assessment comes out following the audit. If you move forward a couple more pages through to a section that's called Identify at the bottom of the page. Through the improvements by function that we have done. So the Identify function, the digital and information strategy is due to be finalised this month. It's currently with the graphics leadership team for input. So we're just making it pretty basically. It will be implemented and utilised across the organisation. Turn to the next page under the heading of Manage. We're currently progressing with remote access agreements with our various contractors, both information services contractors and business contractors. And that's progressing well. The other part is USB portable drives and restricting those. So we're just finalising the testing and exceptions across the organisation. In terms of the exceptions, we do have really good protective technologies in place that scan USB drives when plugged into our devices.
Right, so at the moment you've still got ports where USB drivers can be plugged into.
Yes, you've got to balance that out between the normal mouse type devices versus a USB stick. So we just got to make those exceptions, and then there's exceptions in terms of members of our staff that require large storage devices to come in for those reasons.
And through the chair, if I'm right, Nathan, the work on the remote access agreements with our contractors is something Audit New Zealand have been asking for as well, hasn't they?
Yes.
Part of our program of work that we will complete this year.
Yes. In terms of the protection, as I've touched on with regards to the scan, and now we're the friendly phishing virtual training has been successful and ongoing, and that will carry on with new staff and their onboarding processes and carry that on for further education of existing staff as well.
Did you have a test?
Sorry, the friendly phishing does that testing for us and we report on that. Yes.
Yeah.
So it sets the baseline and then resets the baseline, and we keep on targeting those individuals that need to be educated further.
It's been quite good. I have to say, I quite like being tested because it works for my brain. I always get the 100% done, and then they start to send things out, and it flows into our personal life. It's been really, really good. I'll look at emails that come in now, and I know exactly what to look for before I even open it. Yeah.
The bigger challenge, of course, is always on a mobile device. You don't get the same capability on a computer device. You can hover over and say, yes, that email address is a little bit suspicious.
What if you're getting emails from yourself?
Well, then I'd be of concern, especially if it's it does happen.
It does.
The next step, and which has been on hold due to COVID, is on-site training. So we have actually got a specialist training scheduled in for July for 3 sessions on site here in this room for our staff to attend, and we're emphasising it's not just about the business but also your personal life, because those are forming great good habits basically across your digital presence.
Yeah. What about counsellors? Do they get caught up in that? Do they have potential access into?
Yes, they do. Yeah. And we'll go through that process during the next selection round and educating them as well.
Bigger risk than staff would suggest, because you sort of that arm's length removal, we need to continually remind.
They call it whaling attacks, but it's because of the big fish basically, and they're at the forefront, especially on our website where their contact details are accessible easily. So we do go through that exercise, and actually Meeton is a good example of bringing it to our attention as well, particular fishing attacks.
I'm a whale. Yes, nice.
In terms of detection, this is one thing that I think our audit is going to bring bring to a forefront in terms of recommendations and actions. We have talked about this through various other committees. I think this will come with an investment in cost and resources. It's something that I believe we potentially need to improve on. So it'll be interesting to see the outcome of that. We do have some good procedures in place, but it's a very manual process at the moment, whereas there's a lot of automation technology out there that can assist, and a lot of options to shared services coming on board now as well, which is great. Local government shared services. In terms of respond, and this is where I was going to touch on more this afternoon, later on today, is the disaster recovery. So I think the key points that I want to get across in terms of disaster recovery and business continuity is, from a business disaster recovery point of view, disaster recovery plans are typically informed by business continuity plans. So we don't currently have business continuity plans across the organisation. I have got a proposed framework and template that I'm taking to the leadership group to get feedback. I have also got a draft plan to implement that framework across the organisation with a completion date of later this year. I've also got a question around what testing do we want to do in terms of business continuity, just bearing in mind that we do a lot of work around emergency management as well, which is very similar. In terms of disaster recovery, Information Services has an ICT disaster recovery plan in place. Probably one of the big key things that we didn't have historically was a generator. The generator is down the end of the path there, and it's actually been getting maintained throughout this year and regular tests, and we're doing a full test next Wednesday, where the potential that this building might have a wee flicker of lights, hopefully, if it's successful. Also impacts our Dunn Street pump stations and get people around at the same time to ensure that we don't have an incident there.
Buckets and mops.
The other part of my business unit is information records management. We do have physical records, and we do have a disaster recovery plan in terms of that physical records. Obviously, that's a lot more challenging, especially if it was a flood event like up here, if the water broke. Our main physical record storage is a building out the back here. Getting those physical records away from here in the manageable time would be a challenge, but we do have contacts that can assist us in that situation if we're pre-warned. So obviously, digitising those records improves our ability to maintain business continuity.
That was my question.
And that is a project that we are currently doing. Yes.
Now, aren't you, that you've been digitalised in records?
Yes.
We've got about 5,000 of the 15,000 give or take done.
Yeah, of our property files. And we are looking at other records digitalisation options in the future. How much value they bring to the organisation is a question that we will ask at that time. We do have a lot of archives in our Ranfurly building.
Yeah.
From an emergency management point of view, that is a very safe environment. So it's not a bad environment for those records to be, but there is also the records are starting to fade or break apart and that sort of thing. Some of their old minute meetings and that sort of thing, you know, the real old books that are handwritten calligraphy, race books, etc. as well, which are, in my opinion, arts of work as well and have a lot of historical.
Yes, so it's more archival than business recovery, isn't it? So yeah.
So the information records management plan has outlined, disaster recovery plan has outlined the steps that we need to take. And I was going to bring that this afternoon to show you that there is actually a plan.
Okay, we'll do that next time. Thank you.
Just flowing through a couple more pages in terms of cyber security. Just to wrap that up, as mentioned, referring to the cyber security program of work, obviously the cyber security audit will inform that plan. That plan will inform that program of work. And as mentioned, I think in terms of the identification side of things, I believe there's some space there for us to go work on in the future. And I imagine that auditor will pick up other things. My belief is that we have made significant inroads into our cybersecurity.
We've got the function benchmark. It's our page,
They're blue and orange.
and it's CODC versus the ALGIM. I was just wondering, how do you know how you track, what other councils' score is? How do you access that to know that you're doing better?
Good question. I have been talking to Algin recently, the CEO there, and having some discussions around the value of the Algin cybersecurity framework and how that works. I've got a conference coming up and I'll be having some further discussions around that. It seems interesting that we seem so far ahead of other councils in general. So there has been a little bit of discussion around other councils looking at other frameworks. My thinking on that is that staying within the Algin framework and comparing us with other councils is of value. But when you see the score differences, it does make you question it a little bit.
Well, just wondering how they get that score. So when CODC has its audit, somehow flow back in as well.
So there's a collective system that we input our self-assessments through.
Okay,
So from a CODC point of view, we review that monthly, doing them myself.
right, so other councils do the same.
That's the part I don't know what the frequency of that is, and I don't know what their external audit frequency
Okay,
is.
so there's a bit of a question mark against the,
And that's the sort of questions I want to ask
right,
when I'm at these at the upcoming conference, and also the auditor will have a better understanding of the input from those other councils as well.
yeah, I'll be interesting for next time.
Yeah.
Through the chair though, it would be fair to say that our IS team is at least a very proactive.
Yes.
Yeah, not
Pushing
service,
in the gap.
I know, I get that, compared to some of the other councils I've been across. And I think that's really good, we've got a really good ethos here at CODC.
Through the chair, how does the council sector compare to the the private sector? Are we one of the faster prey fish, or are we compared to the private sector? How do these numbers compare? Do you have any idea? If we're comparing ourselves with other councils, but all the other councils are useless, are we still going to be a bit? That's really harsh. Are we vulnerable because we're nowhere near as protected as most of the private sector?
It's a good question, and I don't believe I can answer that right now.
Fair enough.
The other organisation that had been talking to me had been, in terms of cybersecurity assessment, they were really focused on other councils, so they can have a lot of input. They felt from discussions with myself that in terms of other councils, we were far ahead in terms of where we were at, but compared to the private sector.
You can't really tell. It's probably an unfair question. But
And through the chair, I would imagine it would be different depending on the size of the private sector. So small businesses may be a lot further behind because we've got capacity potentially,
Yes.
but some of those bigger commercial entities would probably leave us potentially.
And probably the type of organisation that they are as well, and how much we base and information that they're putting out there, whereas a lot of small businesses don't tend to have that web presence, whereas a lot of larger entities tend to. And I go back to our example where elected members' contact details are fully accessible, so that makes us, puts ourselves at risk in terms of that.
Yeah.
Pros and cons, of course.
through you, Madam Chair, the management status report, where we start to move into the colour coding, it looks good, but it's a little bit naked when you read it from the outside looking in. So the first line, the asset management, we've got 79.35% done, which looks kind of good, but how essential is it that it's 100% done? How long has it taken us to get to that point? Have some benchmarking to make that a bit more.
So what I'm planning to achieve with the next plan, the plan I'm working on now in the audit, is to actually have some clearer actions linked back to those functional areas, so that you can see that progression.
Great.
And also sort of set where we want to be. Obviously, us trying to be 100% comes with a cost.
Yeah.
Can we actually achieve that?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to lay that in terms of an action plan that's the level that we all agreed to be at, and this is how we're progressing through that.
Yeah, that'd be much more helpful, because you know, 79.35 sounds like a great score at school certificate in my day, but if the pass mark's 80, you've got a problem. So we don't know from where we're sitting.
I'm expecting that a bit more detail on those actions related to that and informs you on that.
Right, thank you.
And through the chair, I believe we bought a paper couple or 18 months, 2 years ago now, where we were looking at the cost and we needed to invest another 50k. And we went through the pros and cons for that, and we couldn't justify that cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Nathan
again,
and his team kept doing that.
yeah, again, that's in terms of those actions, that particular example, that was a C. Not going to get into the details, but it's that auto detection side of things. Bringing that back to the table, I believe that $50,000 cost has reduced because of the local government shared services solutions that are being promoted now.
Yeah.
So how does that, where does that sit in terms of the auditor recommendations, and what benefit does that bring in terms of our scoring, and do we want to get that far or not?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? If 80% or whatever the number is more than adequate, then why spend all the money to try to get this lovely green line?
And at that time, Glenn and myself were concerned that that SEAM solution, what value would it bring to us? In terms of that SEAM solution, based on our conversations, it also comes with a lot of human effort to review the output of it and make decisions on it. So there's some professional services that potentially need to be wrapped around that in terms of having expertise wrapped around it as well to make good decisions for the organisation.
Excellent. Thank you.
So that's the cyber security side of things. In terms of information records management, as mentioned, we've got the audit underway now. The plan that we're preparing, the purpose of the information records management plan is to assess how council currently manages its information and records management and what actions it needs to undertake to improve that management. Information records management plan, this will be filled out further once we complete the audit, and it'll be in terms of those actions and the reporting will be very similar to the cyber security. Point probably to mention there is the framework that we are using is the framework that is being utilised across central government agencies as well, which has had a recent report come out on that, how they're tracking. So it'll be interesting to see how we benchmark those entities. In terms of the privacy plan, same thing again. The purpose of the plan is to assess how council currently protects its customers' personal information and what actions it needs to undertake to improve the protection. The next steps for the privacy plan is to be reviewed by the executive team in terms of those actions, and I've attached the draft plan.
Okay. Thank you. Any to
I just want to check, and I'm a bit lost on where Nathan is in the where we are. The protective technology and the awareness and training on it's page 75 of our agenda. I'm just trying to relate that to bring it back. So it's under the current state by functions and categories. It's the third graph there. And it looks really good. We've got the protective technology is at 80 and a great jump in awareness and training. That's fantastic. And I just had a note to myself, again, it's that benchmarking thing. Is that good enough? And probably in the question of when it comes to risk liability, is there a standard? Is there a number that our insurers say you need to get to this number? Otherwise we don't want to know you kind of thing? Yeah.
So one of the things that we're planning to do for the audit as well is updating our risks. So that goes back to those actions as well. I think I'll also have some conversations with that insurance provider in terms of that as well, because I think that's a valid point.
Yeah.
Where does that should we be sitting? In terms of that education and awareness side of things, I think we should be trying to target 100%. It's not just good for obviously council, but also for the community as well.
Absolutely.
And that will probably benefit our insurance costs.
Yeah.
How you'd like to think.
I think so.
I'm optimistic.
Excellent. That was all I had.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just had one question. I don't mean to be a curly question either, but so having read this, it's a difficult read. Are you comfortable that all the staff are up to speed with these bases? in terms of the security level that we've got in place?
So in terms of staff policy, we simplify it, we have a acceptable use. So we have a cyber security policy and an acceptable use standard, and that's where we tend to focus. In terms of our other standards, and there's 13 of those, that tends to be within my team. And that sets the standard that we expect to be meeting. As I take education as an example, we're obviously progressing that, and I think we are tracking well in terms of that. So we, in terms of that staff interpretation, we try to simplify and make it as understandable as possible. And that education and awareness is key to their involvement in that. The other key part to it, and that falls mainly on all my team really, and our professional services providers, is the particular technology side of things. Obviously trying to reduce the amount of attacks coming into our organisation. We always are getting attacked. We have protective technologies that stop that getting through that, I'll call it the firewall, and having an impact on the business. And I think our staff have confidence that we've got that pretty well managed.
So, and one other question I probably should have asked it before is, on the digitisation that you're doing at the moment, the records, are they staying here after you finish that process, or are they being moved offsite?
So that's a decision to be made in terms of destruction of our property files. So property files is greater than property files of 15,000 properties that we've got across the district.
Yeah.
That's our current focus. We have the authority to destroy from central government. On that, once I've got a few other systems in place, the intent is to get sign off from one of our executive managers, planning environment, to confirm that she is happy with us to destroy those records.
Okay.
Otherwise, we've got to maintain the storage of those physical records forever, basically, because they are archive born. In terms of the quality side of things, we are meeting the standard to enable us to destroy it. It's just an internal decision to can we destroy it or not. Are we comfortable to destroy it? I should say.
Yeah.
And that just comes down to confidence that the process has been done right.
Yeah.
And that's the exercise I want to go through, is making sure that the confidence in the business is good.
And everything's backed up elsewhere, so.
Yes.
In the future.
Actually, just touching on backup, I mentioned that earlier, in terms of that ability to recover from a digital event, we've undertaken a minor test. We're just preparing for a major test. We don't plan to do a complete and full test. That comes with some other challenges that we don't want to impact the business with, but we are very comfortable with the technologies that we've deployed in terms of our ability to recover. We're just testing that now, and the major test that we're working towards is with our key resource planning system that manages all our financials and resource consenting, authority consenting, customer service. Once we've got that test, we'll be very, very comfortable that we can recover from a major event.
Should be quite significant, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Awesome.
We've actually had that in place for the last 5 years. It's just this change that we've gone through in terms of renewal. We're just going through that exercise again to get our confidence that we can recover in a major event situation. That backup recovery environment is based on the as well.
Often wonder what would happen if you lost all the rating data. That would be a disaster.
That would be, yes. But that rating data is one of that major test.
Through the chair, going back to the digital side of things, Nathan's team peer review each other's work, and there's some real basic checks, as in there's 40 pages in this physical document, there's 40 pages scanned. There's a whole lot of assurance they create, so that if we do decide down the track to destroy any of these records, paper records, there's that assurance that we've done this right, because there's been a few councils that have had to start again through not doing those steps of real checks. And they're manual and they're time consuming, but for our long-term win, they're worth that investment in people's time.
Yeah. So, for what you've got left to scan, is it old records from meetings basically, or is it rating information and property files as well?
So the current focus is on the property files.
Yeah.
So we've done 5,000 out of 15,000, give or take. So our focus is on the next 10,000.
Sure.
In terms of our old records, that's a discussion for the future.
Yeah.
We will,
Okay.
in time for the next annual plan, Nathan will come and present to council what he needs of the way of cost, whether you ramp it up or drag it out. And that'll be a council decision, because you ramp it up, you'll need more people. You drag it out,
Yeah.
there's a greater risk with your physical files, but it reduces the cost to your ratepayer. And it's those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
that we need to be.
Yeah.
It's that balance, isn't it? Nathan will bring that to, as I think he's going to bring us a workshop in the early to council.
Probably the thing to note is all our new records that are coming into council in terms of property,
Yeah.
building percentage resources, and sets are all that's going on, all new property.
And another mountain.
Yeah.
But what that's doing is slowing down the ability to go back to the historical stuff, isn't it?
So if those 5,000 extra people that come to live in Central Otago, but it's.
Yeah.
Just keeps growing.
Yep, okay.
And hot market, hot property market.
Yeah,
they
oh,
just keep
yes.
putting pressure on
Yeah.
it. And COVID has not helped us.
No, it has not.
Can't stand those from home. No.
Thank you.
That was great, thank you.
Right, well,
So the
I'll
workshop this afternoon.
I'll move that we receive the report.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Next. That's been done. Thank you. And that'll be interesting, next meeting, getting views back on. Right. Policy and,
Yes. So at the last committee, the meeting, sorry, the committee asked that I bring these back. So both policies have been implemented and have the changes that were recommended by this committee have been put in place. So in terms of log on the request policy, changes included the simplification of the charges table and subject to staff delegations in relation of release of information. In terms of the privacy policy changes, this included expanding the scope to include elected members, council's obligations as an employer, and staff considerations for personal information. In terms of our privacy policy, we are currently updating all our 7 council-owned and managed websites. The primary website has been done. Basically creating consistency of those terms and conditions. So terms and conditions and privacy statement and link to the privacy policy across all 7 sites.
Just at our pre-agenda meeting that you hadn't actually expected this to be a formal report back. So just, I'd have it. It's right.
but no, it's very tiny to do it. So.
It does, it carries it up and demonstrates that the action's been followed.
Madam Chair, and it's just for my own information, the initial charge and charge per half hour of $38, the Ombudsman's charging guidelines linked in the work, is that, do they have a range, you know, you should be charging between this or that, or do they just say?
Say $38.
Thank you.
Sorry, the link not work.
No.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
blue, but
I will fix that.
Okay. Move that we receive the report.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
Excellent. Okay, health and safety. Oh, hello.
Hi, hello. May I accept the report as read?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So I've got a couple of talking points I'd like to take you through for this report. So starting in the first section, we've got our COVID-19 management. It's a pretty short section this quarter. I mean, it's insignificant. So as an organisation, we've made some changes. We've lifted that live vaccine pass off council facilities, and we've also continued operating in our council offices at 50% using that hybrid working model. But we're not at this post-COVID stage yet. We're still very much within it. So we're yet to see what the true impact is going to be of COVID on our community, but particularly on our workforce as well. So the people and culture team is looking to find out what we can learn from this experience and how we can prepare as we're going to move into that next phase. So in future reports, what you can expect to see here is how we're going to be managing things like our psychosocial critical risk, and this COVID management section really sections in this report, so incident reporting and that register. With our incident reports, so in the section 2.3.1 and 2 there, we had 9 incidents reported that relate to occupational violence and aggression generally. So we have antisocial behaviour, trespass, threatening or abusive communications, and this is occurring across our business, so front facing and our office based staff as well, and quite underreported. And this relates directly to that psychosocial risk that's on our critical risk register in section 2.4. So in the first quarter, we linked our customer services teams and our aquatics teams to some de-escalation training that they found pretty valuable in working out how to manage those situations. And since writing this report, we've had several other teams from around our organisation request the same kind of support. And the exposure to this hazard in that post-COVID working world, we're expecting to see that on the rise. We're going to see that everywhere. So what people in culture and myself in health and safety will be doing is thinking about how we can strengthen our foundations in the organisation. So preparing our staff to continue to manage those relationships with our customers, and also what else they might need to cope with situations that sometimes they have a little control over, particularly if they're receiving those communications, they're not necessarily the person who can solve the problem. And what I will be doing in the next phase that you can see coming through in the next report when we meet again will be identifying our areas of staff who are most at risk. National research is showing that that's most likely to turn up in our people leaders, and also by extension that's our elected members too, and also our younger staff, so our under 29s as well. They're known now through a series of national data that's been collected by AUT over the course of the COVID period, that they're most likely to experience burnout. So I think that was what I really wanted to raise as being our next target area. It's probably the most critical on our horizon that we're going to build our support into. Does anybody have any questions on that section at all?
I do. Just taking myself back. So, really good report, thank you. There's a couple of things, the contractor management, and we've got our contractors at 89 and 78.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's good or bad.
Yeah.
If it has to be 100.
Yeah,
yes.
I totally agree. And I've been thinking a lot about this section. I've included 2 new numbers in it as well. When we're thinking about site-wise, that's pre-qualification for our contractors. So that means that 89% of our contractors have got a score in an auditing process that tells us they've got health and safety policies, they've got incident reporting systems in place that meet a particular framework of measurement. But it doesn't necessarily tell us what are our contractors doing when they actually come and do the work for us.
But what it's saying is then only 89% of them get that.
Well, they achieve it, but then of the different criteria, they'll probably have more in one section than another.
But is that 89%, I read it to say that the average score of our contractors are 89%, but 100% of them have gone through that WorkSafe process, right?
Correct.
Right. So 89 seems good. But I don't know.
It's better than the average for site-based contractors, but of course, that's not the only pre-qualification system in this country.
No, but my point is to coming to this committee.
Yeah.
If you had another line that said the average for site-wise contractors is 72, I'd be going woohoo. If you said it was 91, I'd be going So that would, even though there are other criteria to have what the average is for that, we can see how we're tracking.
So 89 is better than 78. So
yeah,
it's good, but shouldn't it be?
I would love for them to have 100%. Yeah, we're always asking for them to go higher. One thing the contractors have fed back on this is their scoring, I believe, at some point. We haven't gone through the site-wise pre-qualification process ourselves, so I don't really know what questions they're being asked, which is of interest to me, particularly when I want to know what does it mean to be a gold site-wise certificate holder. So that's something I need to investigate a little bit further.
That's a council requirement for contractors.
They're required to have the green, which is 75% or higher. So there's 4 contractors there that don't meet that standard. And when this report comes through on a monthly basis, I check with our contract managers to see if anybody is seeking to engage that contractor and work, to advise them that these contractors actually don't currently meet that standard.
Right.
So they either need to bring it up to get the appropriate certificate.
Yeah.
Well, there's not really any alternative, because the alternative is to go through a site-wise exemption. We discourage.
Okay. Okay, so the requirement is green or better.
Green or better.
Okay.
Just for my own education, the antisocial behaviour, we had 6 reported incidents. Could that be the same person being difficult 6 times?
It could be, but it's not.
But it's not, yeah, but just in terms of how the reporting's done, thank you. And even more, wanting to know from my own knowledge, the cuts and the public injuries, this is just the way my brain works. If somebody trips and falls at the pool and cuts themselves, does that go on both, or does it get defined as one or the other?
No, but these are the conversations I have with myself when I'm putting this.
I'm glad I'm not the
when
only
I'm
one.
putting podcasts together. It really depends what they've received first aid for. More often than not, the cuts and lacerations are that the person has cut themselves on something. So they're getting out of the pool and cut their hand on the railing, and it's pretty defined.
Yeah.
And then I'll read the incident report, look at the context and say, what's the cause of this? Because the cause is kind of what we want to manage. So
Managed, yeah, right.
And I'll pop it into there.
So in the incident where kids running along, they trip on a wire that's up out of the ground, God knows what it would be, and they cut themselves. It's the trip that's going to be reported, because that's the thing that we want to. That's
what we want to address. There's always going to be opportunities for them to fall into more.
Oh, as soon as it's human beings. No, that makes really good sense. Thank you. And are we down to the risk management policy yet?
No.
No, cool. I've got something on that.
So I thought this, I mean, from a health and safety perspective, I think this report is excellent, and it's. I didn't see a lot of data that indicated wellness.
Yeah, and that's because we don't really have it. What we've been doing at this council for wellbeing has really been found in that initiative space. So to do Movement March, we might have a pink shirt day. So what I've just taken to my executive manager, now that we're out of that COVID management phase, is a proposal for how we might go about creating a wellbeing strategy for the organisation. And part of that will be capturing some of that data about where we actually are in terms of our protection measures. So things like our job design, do we have overinflated jobs that people find stressful, and also that individual wellbeing. So I sought permission to commission a couple of surveys.
Because there should be some, I was thinking on other reports that I see, there should be data that you do have, which are good lead indicators. So example would be amount of leave outstanding over, say, 30 days. That's an indication, well, potentially fraud, or potential burnout, or those sorts of things. So that's a good measure, because what you hopefully do, you start to see these initiatives bring them down. Another one will be just keeping an eye on sick days, and sick days taken, and you need the graphs to give you the trend. EAP usage, again, you're going to see the trends, and your turnover. And all of that data we would have already, because you
I can find that.
And that starts to give you some good lead indicators, and then when you do your programs and your activities, you'll know what you want to see coming down or going up. Help sort of provide that feedback. Engagement surveys?
Yes, we did.
Okay, well, that's another thing. Okay.
I can absolutely find that. We do have all of that information. It's not necessarily come through in this format.
Yeah.
And that's basically to do with how our people are structured.
Yeah.
But I can absolutely get it.
Yeah, but I think that would be, they would be powerful measures to
Absolutely.
keep an eye on when you do your initiatives, to start to see, because you want to see the dial move, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or not move,
Or not move.
you know, because sometimes it could be, well, we're just trying to hold on here, we don't want it to get worse.
Yeah.
And the initiative could be just to stop it moving as well, potentially. Yes, really good report, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything for you?
Swimming pools always seem to be a bad area, don't they?
I'll move that we receive the report.
I'll second that.
Right.
Those in favour say aye. Against? Now we've got the risk management policy.
This was a part of the attachment to the
Yeah.
report that Rachel's just presented.
Okay.
So I'll actually,
It looks to me,
I wonder if that's where Tim was asking for a question.
Yeah, well, sorry. If we can bear to where we're at, but I can still ask it.
Because while Rachel's still on the road.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'll try it.
Just with the risk management policy, under scope, elected members aren't there, and I don't think we fall as persons seconded to council, or we might. So there's quite a bit of risk with elected. I mean, I'm here all the time. I'm driving a car, and is there a reason elected members aren't in there? Should they be?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that question because the risk management policy has been a corporate services policy. So that would have been Gabby McFarlane was the policy owner for that policy.
Yes, it can just be considered somewhat.
Yeah.
Where are you looking for that?
That's at page 185 of the agenda under scope. So the policy, the risk management policy, refers to employees and staff, including employees, volunteers, persons seconded to council and contractors. And I don't think any of that captures elected members.
We have captured elected members in our risk register.
Yeah,
So we'll just see how.
and in various other, like the cyber security, I think had elected members, but that might just be a weekend.
Well, something just that was part of the review.
Cool, that was the only thing.
yeah, I'm a little bit confused because, yeah, this policy here says next review 26th of August 2021, which is quite some time ago. The policy register says June 2022. So it always, those are not where this policies come from. And I always get a bit disconcerted when on one you've got say one bit of information and then a document we have different. I suspect this was the previous version.
I suspect I need to have a look at that.
Yeah.
It hasn't been updated by that one document,
Yeah.
even though the document probably has been, but I agree that we need to tidy up the consistency between this.
Yeah. Anyway, it's so the risk management policy is coming for the next meeting. Maybe. Anyway, okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the version before the one we approved. By the looks of it. Okay, right. We'll move on to the chair's report. I have nothing to report. I thought we were ahead of time.
I thought we were too. I don't know what happened.
Members report, anything?
Nothing from me, Madam Chair.
Nothing from me.
Okay. Governance report.
I have to move those be received.
Second that. Favour?
Aye.
Yes.
Just for awareness, Wayne and I are going to look at that full agenda in front of you, because what it does is have all our regular stuff saying that we're going to do it. So I don't know if this is helpful as the one we do for council, that indicates when you might have a workshop or you might have a decision point on things. So Wayne and I might just see if we can do something.
Make it a little bit more granular, so.
Yeah, and maybe, as we talked the other day, maybe potentially even include some of those key policies that this committee looks at. So Wayne and I will take a look at that.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Because then we can see, well, what's coming up for the next one. Okay, now what's my page? Date of next meeting. Okay, 30th of September. Got to load in everyone's diary.
Absolutely.
Okay, we now have a resolution to exclude the public, which I think I need to move, or someone does.
Left that and I'll second it.
Excellent, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Right.
So, give me a couple of minutes.
A couple of minutes.
Hold on to that. I think